The lead up to a holiday is supposed to be an exciting time, but Ron and Carmen Seabrook are full of dread.
What hope you got? Like someone's going to get the flu, and if they bring it back to the ship, air conditioning's going to give it to everybody. And I don't think it's fair.
Those fears have intensified after 2,000 passengers on the Dawn Princess, the same cruise the couple is booked on, were quarantined for more than 5 hours on Saturday. And now people who were aboard its sister ship have tested positive for swine flu. The Seabrooks have tried in vain to get a refund. A few weeks ago they were told they'd have to forfeit half of the $70,000 fare. Now they're being told they'd have to lose the lot.
What's it to a company with 3,000 odd passengers if 10 people decide not to go? Is it going to send the ship broke? No way.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
If the 1960s represented the university's birth, then this would have to be its coming of age.
But second to developing the campus here on Callaghan, this would be the most ambitious and probably the most exciting development in the university's history.
The Newcastle City Centre Renewal Report recommends the university spends $100 million expanding its CBD campus to accommodate the Faculty of Arts and Education, along with the Schools of Business and Law. That equates to 7,000 students and 1,000 staff, an almost tenfold expansion of its existing operations on the corner of King and Auckland Streets.
It's about identifying the projects that could bring people back into the city centre and see the CBD revitalised.
A new civic justice precinct to coexist with education services is part of the blueprint, but the Newcastle Law Society says the legal community wants to remain in the East End.
I don't think anybody suggests that the law school has to operate cheek by jowl with the legal precinct.
The report also recommends the heavy rail line be cut at Wickham, which suits the GPT proposal for the redevelopment of the Hunter Street Mall, although the company is still yet to commit to a starting date.
The revival of the City of Newcastle depends upon private sector funding.
The Hunter Valley Research Foundation has now been called on to help gauge the opinion of individuals.
I want them to understand that this is such a historic report that will define the city going forward, and it's really important that everyone has a say, everyone reads this document.
The report can be found on the web, all 112 pages of it. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Cutting Newcastle's rail line is perhaps the most controversial recommendation in the HDC City Centre Renewal Report, and everyone has an opinion on it.
I'm comfortable with the rail being terminated at Wickham if all of the other measures happen along with it.
It means building a major transport interchange west of Wickham Station.
I think it's a good idea, actually. Yeah, it'll open up the foreshore.
At this stage, I think it's probably the best option, yeah.
But while some welcome the proposal, others are outraged.
Save Our Rail will not give up the fight because we represent the people, the wider community and the people who mostly need and use the rail.
Maitland Council's also against the proposal. Mayor Peter Blackmore issued a statement saying Council has reaffirmed its opposition to the removal of the rail into Newcastle and will call for it to be retained. So will some commuters.
I disagree with it. Yeah, I catch the train every day, so I totally disagree with it.
Tourists aren't too sure about it being cut either.
If it had been cut a few stations back, I never would have found Newcastle.
But the Lord Mayor says travellers' wishes shouldn't influence the city's future.
The development of Newcastle and Newcastle City cannot be captured by the needs of people transiting here by rail.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The house of Jeff and Anne Gidley is almost held up by the accolades given to their sons. Between their eldest Matthew, who was a representative regular, and now Kurt, the list of achievements fills rooms. But the state captaincy will take some topping.
Well, the boys always say playing for New South Wales is the best you can do. So I think to captain New South Wales and hopefully win will be the best you can do.
While Matthew was all natural talent and timing, Kurt's rise in the game has been built on hard work and determination, which combined to make him the perfect leader, even if there's still plenty of his parents' little boy left in the man today.
I could imagine him at bonding night tonight, but he'd still be the cheeky little boy.
From a league heartland to an outpost in Darwin, but the same level of pride for the mother of James McManus, happy to tell everyone today about her son's incredible journey from Scotland to the Territory and now to the New South Wales Origin team.
Very dedicated and very keen to achieve the very high standards in whatever he's played.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The Public Services Association says Cessnock Jail staff are still distressed by the upheaval caused during the privatisation process. 50 workers were transferred or took voluntary redundancies, and more than 100 inmates were moved to other centres.
Yeah, it unsettled things massively, not only for the staff, but the centre, the community, the inmates, everybody in general. There's still a lot of scar tissue there on the surface, and a lot of people are going to be untrusting. It's going to be something that's going to have to be done over time.
The union says a new management plan tabled at a meeting with the Department of Corrective Services today is the first step towards healing those wounds.
But at the moment we're very happy that there's been some positive steps put in place and we can all move into one direction and hopefully get this place back to what it used to be.
The plan proposes to keep inmate and staff numbers at current levels until 2011, when they'll be reassessed. The PSA will explore the finer details of the management plan and will give its official response at another meeting in a month's time. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Arriving home sore and sorry, but with few excuses. The Knights know they were simply beaten by the better side last night.
Full credit to them, they played real good footy and, we've just got to pick up our game for next week.
It was a difficult night in more ways than one for Jared Mullen, who learned through a leaked media report that he'd missed Origin selection before kick-off. But he still backs those who did get the nod.
I've always said every year that they should stick with the halves that they go with to start off with, but if I keep playing good football and, something happens, maybe I can get a call up.
With a near full-strength Bulldog side heading this way, Mullen knows life without his captain will make that job tougher. Newcastle rarely goes well without Kurt Gidley, but that's no excuse for the man who admits he'll have extra responsibility this weekend.
When Bedsy and Joey back in the days weren't playing, that no one thought we could win, and I think it's a thing of that now. People probably don't think we can win without Gids because he's such an inspirational player, but that's very not true.
Former Tiger Shannon McDonnell has the job of filling Gidley's shoes and will make his club debut on Sunday after joining Newcastle only 2 weeks ago, while Wes Nagama replaces James McManus on the wing. Steve Simpson will captain the side, which is now 5th on the competition ladder. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
I'm pretty good and I'm going to be ready to play against Pohang.
This family, who doesn't want to be identified, went to hospital this afternoon showing swine flu-like symptoms. There's no immediate way of knowing whether any members have been infected by the H1N1 strain, which is transmitted the same way as the more common variety of influenza.
People are practicing good hand hygiene and they're not coughing and sneezing over each other, less than a metre away from each other. They really pose very limited risk.
Screening stations like this one at the John Hunter are now set up in major hospitals where anyone wanting to enter the emergency department is scrutinised.
This is part of the whole containment strategy, trying to make sure that there's no spread of the virus.
Hunter New England Health says it's been encouraged by the number of people taking precautions, but is also reminding those with a simple case of the sniffles not to rush to emergency departments. The exceptions are if you've been to any of these countries in the past fortnight, travelled on this flight or this vessel. The Page family from the Cessnock district has been in isolation at home since disembarking the Pacific Dawn on Monday.
We have a cough, but one of the girls had a headache, but none of the other symptoms have raised their heads.
It's now awaiting the results. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Most of the licensed venues in Hamilton have been voluntarily locking patrons out from 1:30 a.m. since last November, but police say self-regulation has failed, with their numbers showing assaults in and around licensed premises have jumped by 40%. They also say there's been a string of liquor licensing breaches.
We're concerned that the licensees, some licensees that is, are not managing their establishments as well as what I would require. And the general community needs to be able to go to these entertainment areas safely.
Police want to impose 1 a.m. lockouts and a 3 a.m. close, like in Newcastle, where assaults have dropped by more than 60% in the last 12 months. The Hamilton Liquor Record says it's not entirely opposed to the idea, but it wants more information about where assaults are taking place.
We need to know where things are happening. We can't take the responsibility of the whole community, but we can take responsibility for what's happening in and around our premises.
Meanwhile, the Newcastle Residents Group has obtained footage which it says is an example of the drunken behaviour still littering Newcastle streets. Tony Brown argues more needs to be done to address the problem, and he'll be pushing his case to Nathan Rees when the Premier visits Newcastle tomorrow.
The police have finally come on board in terms of the Hamilton complaint, but we're calling upon them and the authorities to support residents in Newcastle who will still experience significant alcohol-related problems.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
The community now has 8 weeks to comment on the long-term blueprint for Newcastle, but the legal fraternity has already prepared its submission. The Newcastle Law Society says it has an alternative to the Justice Precinct plan proposed by the Hunter Development Corporation, and one it claims would better suit the profession.
Which would allow for a new federal court facility, a new law school, student accommodation, and an expanded state court facility.
However, the HDC says the plan represents connectivity, and moving the courts to Civic would stimulate other sectors as well.
It's important that those like activities have the opportunity to grow together and feed off each other.
A view shared by the university. The report recommends it moves the Faculty of Education and Arts, Schools of Business and Law to the city centre, bringing with it around 8,000 staff and students.
If the Justice Precinct was not to go ahead, we would then need to reconsider whether it makes more sense to have the law school staying on this Callaghan campus.
The 3 biggest whale-watching boats in Port Stephens headed out to sea in unison this morning, heralding the official start of the season with a united front. The region is rapidly gaining an international reputation as a premier whale-watching destination.
We have what we call the whale corridor. Narrow corridor of warm water. The whales come in very close and enables us to get to the whales faster and spend more time with them.
But Port Stephens tour operators still face a tough 2009.
The economic downturn is certainly not helping us in the tourist industry. It's going to be a very difficult season for everyone. The swine flu fever, that's placing a big impact on the tourist industry.
Hence the need to work together. Luckily, the season got off to a great start, with dozens of tourists and 2 humpback whales putting in an appearance. 20-year-old skipper Michael Annabelle has taken over his family's business. It's his first season as Moonshadow 5's captain, and already he's learnt a few tricks about how to maximise a passenger's whale-watching experience.
Keep the boat so it doesn't move as much, hold it into the waves and keep it as steady as possible.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
There was a lady who mentioning before that a child had whiplash across the back from sticks. My kids have had biting, we've had hitting. It's numerous things. I've got a child that complains that she's sick every morning because she doesn't want to go to school. My kids have been here, this is their second year here, and we've had problems right from the start. I know some of the girls have got kids in year 4 and year 5 that's been since kindergarten.
Amid predictions the hunters' unemployment rate could hit double figures this year, the Premier has set aside some cash to generate jobs in the region. Although it's earmarked for encouraging green employment, Nathan Rees wouldn't say exactly how it should be spent.
We'll let the people of the Hunter decide that, but we have got a significant fund there that is about attracting investment into New South Wales. Some $3 million of that has been allocated to the Hunter.
One area he's keen to see some investment in is Newcastle East and the Mall, after this week's release of the Inner City Renewal Report. But Mr East says it would be premature to inject any funds before the community has had a chance to comment.
Look, I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to be the town planner on the spot here in the town hall this afternoon, look, I expect the consultation process to bring forward a range of views on this.
Cutting the rail line was one of the report's key recommendations, but the government's been given two very different quotes on how much it would cost to build an end-of-the-line transport hub at Wickham, with the Transport Ministry's costing up to $500 million more than that of private firm Parsons Brinckerhoff. Today, the Premier couldn't explain the gap. Penny Evans, NBN News.
Maintaining water supplies and keeping the precious resource affordable are expected to be the key issues facing the water industry in the future. Hunter Water today went through a Water Services Association of Australia report identifying where the company stands in comparison to other suppliers and what it needs to do to meet customer needs over the next decade. Climate change has been identified as the biggest challenge.
That's going to have impacts on us that we don't even think about at the present time. Just dry soils, cracking pipes, bushfires and floods, and we're going to get longer, drier droughts.
Hunter Water says it's already taken some steps to addressing climate change issues, such as the creation of Tilligra Dam, further investment in water recycling and catchment management. The report found the impacts of global warming will see more money spent on maintaining and building infrastructure, which of course trickles down to water bills.
The new report indicates that right around Australia, prices of water are going up 50 to 100%, mainly for desalination and recycling. We're fortunate in our area. We've gone for around a 30%, and Tilligra is driving our costs lower than what we normally would have spent on desalination.
IPART is currently assessing Hunter Water's proposed price hike, which will see bills rise by 31% over the next 4 years. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
"44 years ago, then Council beach inspectors Kevin Mongan and John Young started speaking to groups of school children just like these about how to stay safe on local beaches and around pools. They wanted to ram home the water safety message as young as possible. The program is still running now, although it's a lot better resourced thanks to sponsorship.
Yeah, it's a sense of pride and a great thrill to see that something we started so simply has become so important.
They take notice, and I think over the years it's paid dividends.
Not only do the children learn a thing or two, the key is taking the lesson home to parents.
It's simply put down to supervision. It would not matter how old a child is, whether it's a toddler or a 10-year-old.
Every winter, off-duty lifeguards speak to 12,500 students across the city, a program the Newcastle Council recognises as invaluable, considering more than 90 young people drowned around the state last year. Penny Evans, NBN News.
The horizon off Newcastle is usually dominated by coal ships, but not this week. The giant vessels have been shifted south to allow HMAS Diamantina unlimited access to search for discarded anchors.
The ships sit here for about 2 weeks at anchor before they come in to load up, and then if the anchor of that ship gets tangled round a discarded anchor, then they will have to break their cable, and it's just going to make the problem worse.
Fishermen say the anchors have been affecting their business for years, but it was the grounding of the Pasha Bulker in 2007 that brought the issue to the surface.
As a result of the Pasha Bulker inquiry, there's assessed to be about 40 anchors discarded in and around the approaches to Newcastle Harbour.
The crew of the Diamantina has covered more than 35 square kilometres, about a third of the total search area, utilising specialist equipment and a team of Navy divers.
When we find a contact, then we can either visually identify it by putting our remotely operated MDV, mine disposal vehicle, in the water, which has a camera and a sonar.
In amongst these fish is an anchor and its cable, which could weigh as much as 20 tonnes. It could also be worth $250,000. The crew has made 2 positive identifications and has a handful of unconfirmed sightings. Once the Navy ship has completed its search, the Maritime Authority will consider whether to conduct a salvage operation or simply chart the anchors' locations so other vessels can avoid them. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
In a sport that pushes all the boundaries, it's good to know how far away the fence is.
Australia has the most majority of mean bulls I've seen in any other place I've rode, so we'll be running around trying to get to the fence.
But for the first time this weekend, Morpeth bull rider Brendan Clark will be behind it.
My whole career, I've never actually sat in the crowd and watched a bull ride, and with my family, I've always been riding.
Still recovering from life-threatening injuries, Clark was crushed after coming off a bull last month during a round of the American Pro Tour. Riders revel in the adrenaline rush of staying upright during that 8 seconds, but acknowledge seeing this firsthand was sobering.
He took 2 hind legs off, a 1-ton animal directly to the stomach and chest area, so it wasn't pretty, and we were worried about him an awful lot there for a little while.
Clark's recovery means he's missing Australia's richest ever month of bull riding, which started in Townsville last weekend. The Aussies won the team's event, and convincingly, leaving the rest of the world's side in a spin and searching for its get square this weekend. As for Brendan, he won't be riding until July at least, which leaves him time to plan for next year's homecoming.
Our goal is to make the sport that big in this country that, we can have sellout, crowds like they do in a lot of other sports.
But there's no sport quite like this. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. Sean Fletcher came from Southport to Glendale in 2004 with little more than a pair of sprinting shoes and a troublesome ankle, which brought about not only a change in location, but sport as well.
I've been long jumping for about 4 years. I sometimes still think that I might have made a better triple jumper, but that option was sort of taken away from me with an injury.
In landing in long jump though, he's just won a spot in the national team to compete at the World University Summer Games in Serbia. now less than 5 weeks away.
We haven't had a lot of time. He went on a holiday to Bali and we couldn't get in touch with him to let him know he was in the team.
For this 26-year-old maths teacher from Lake Munmora High, even time away from class is all about crunching the numbers. And apart from training, that means squeezing school and study into his schedule. He also does the odd pro sprint race.
Obviously, to jump far, you've got to run fast. So I enjoy the pro running. Everybody has a chance to do well, and I do like going out there and beating the sprinters occasionally.
Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
It started out as a low-key community cabinet meeting, but things spiralled out of control when whistleblower and sacked Milton Orkopolis staffer Gillian Snedden confronted the Premier. Ms Snedden claimed the Parliament sacked her after Mr Orkopolis learnt of her involvement as a police witness into the child sex and drug investigation against him. The former MP has since been convicted and jailed. And the accusations kept coming. Ms Snedden said she had sent a fax to former Police Minister Carl Scully about the allegations against Mr Orkopolis 3 months before he was charged. The Premier refuted her claims. Such as this.
Had I had an inkling of this bloke's evil secrets, his feet wouldn't have touched the ground as I dragged him to the police.
Ms Snedden also accused Mr Rees of quashing an inquiry into her treatment by the Labor Party. Ms Snedden stormed out of the meeting with the support of the crowd. And she offered a parting shot. Madeline Bond, NBN News. Hunter residents braved the rain to get their messages across. But if attracting the attention of politicians was their aim, it proved futile, with ALP members already inside the Glades Conference Centre. Premier Nathan Rees had wanted the meeting to include robust discussion, but he got more than he bargained for when the subject of Tilligra Dam arose.
But we're determined that that dam go ahead. It will secure It will secure the hunter's water supply for the next 50 years and support.
However, he received support over the state's handling of Cessnock Prison.
And we've decided to retain Cessnock Correctional Centre in public hands.
And for the action being taken against illegal sex workers in Islington.
There'll be landscaping of the park to reduce secluded areas and no loitering signs to assist police move sex workers on.
But during questions, Mr Rees all but lost control of the crowd. Other big issues were discussed in small groups and included the Newcastle City Centre renewal report and the possible cutting of the rail line, as well as alcohol-related crime and opposition to the proposed Durrally coal mine. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Police are still investigating the matter, but we have that information that she may have been at the time.
We're clearly preparing for that. We certainly at this stage are ready to ramp up operations at any time.
As far as exhibitions go, this is Confronting Stuff, a hangman's rope and noose, the hood worn by a condemned prisoner, and copies of the death certificates of the 16 prisoners hanged at the jail. It's all in the jail's new museum space open today, which will add value to the prison tour experience.
It provides a new aspect, a new thing to present to members of the local community, to visitors to this area.
Maitland Jail administrators are now looking to expand the collection and want to hear from anyone with prison artefacts.
Even the smallest item, a paper, newspaper clipping or a small booklet, may finish a story that we have a large number of parts to but a missing link.
The museum will also double as a function and exhibition centre and cater for large school groups. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Despite its modest facade, the James Theatre is the place to be seen. That goes for producer, performer, punter and picture. Inside, a short film started the long weekend. Today, the weather gave the town a natural silver screen, and if you've been well received in Dungog, you've done good. This festival a place to show your wares.
Showing your product on your home turf to your own mob is quite a challenge, and it's the real litmus test.
As far as attendance goes, this festival has grown eightfold since the first weekend in 2007. Of course, there are growing pains, and yes, not everyone is so welcoming. But for businesses at least, this weekend is their blockbuster. What's been the most popular coffee here at the moment?
or chai latte. We're getting a good hit with those, and soy milk.
A bold request in this dairy farming country, but it's the region's mining industry which helped secure the festival's major sponsor, and it's defended its involvement.
I just find it incredible that people could question support for something that is so good.
It could be the makings of a new Aussie drama to rival those out of Hollywood. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
The Knights are already missing their two Origin stars, and today Steve Simpson played little more than spectator at training. The stand-in skipper at growing odds to play on Sunday.
Simo's, loss would hurt us, but we'll see how that goes tomorrow. Still a chance he'll play.
It would open the door for a host of younger players to get a rare start, while the captaincy could fall to fellow forward Chris Houston, who did the job in the corresponding game last year. He reckons everyone needs to lift a gear though after Monday night's performance.
We probably played our worst game of the year, and we're all aware of that.
Scott Giroux wasn't involved in that game. Instead, he trained on his own at home. But with Ben Rogers floored by the flu, the young half is set to reunite with Jared Mullen, and he can't wait for that.
Been a tough couple of weeks sitting there watching, but can't wait to get a go and just looking forward to Sunday.
Shannon McDonald can sympathise. After limited opportunities at the Tigers this season, he joined Newcastle early this month, searching for a chance. He gets it this weekend, and what a time to make his club debut against the competition leaders and filling big shoes at fullback.
I'm more keen to prove it to myself. I'm not too worried about impressing people or showing what I can do unless I'm come off the field knowing that I've done it myself.
If the Knights win, they'll match a club record of 9 straight at home. If they lose, they risk tumbling out of the top 8.
We had some guys that should have stayed on a couple more, and they know it, but we'll just be looking for some revenge this weekend.
Each year, around 600 events worth an estimated $500 million are held at the Sydney Convention Centre. In comparison, business tourism generates around $20 million in the Hunter. And with that number slipping due to the global economic crisis, the Lord Mayor and business community want a piece of the Convention Centre action.
There's a great opportunity, and it revolves around the Cruise Hunter project. If we were able to attain a wharf that would take the tourist ships and double as a convention centre.
The HDC Newcastle City Centre Renewal Report has indicated that a cruise ship terminal and convention centre in Newcastle has potential, with Queen's Wharf identified as a possible site.
I'm certainly interested in it, and I note that the Premier, when he was here, took particular note of comments like that.
Rough estimates put the cost of such a facility at $45 million. The Lord Mayor wants the state to fund at least part of the project, which has the support of the business community.
We've got a very strong resources sector here, so if we had the appropriate facilities, we'd get international mining and resources companies coming to the Hunter to have conventions here.
We want to see a reduction in the energy used in the whole area, an increase in food gardening, increase in water tank, in solar generation, perhaps even wind generation, renewable energies.
Forget country, these guys are rock stars of the bush. The dance card listed bulls only, and they rarely play nice. Singleton's Cody Heffernan felt the highs and lows of what this sport offers, while Saris Ramsey rode for two last night. With his young son just out of surgery back home in Queensland, Dad tallied the most points on a night Team Australia needed them most. After leading the Aussies to a win last weekend, Pete Farley needed another captain's knock, but just keeping out of trouble became priority number one. When Rocky McDonald rode the international team into the lead with just one ride remaining, the visitors looked to have won it. Rockley's Brett Hanrahan, though, had the last say on that, going the 8-second journey with the ride of the night to make it back-to-back wins for the Australian team.
Obviously all the talent comes out of go-karts, so yeah, it'd be good to further the career one day.
It was only a matter of time until H1N1 reached the Hunter.
We've had two confirmed cases in the Hunter area, two people who were passengers on the Pacific Dawn.
They disembarked from the cruiser in Sydney last Monday and have been in home quarantine ever since. They've been identified only as an adult and child from different families. Doctors say they've been model patients.
The response from these unfortunate folks who went on a holiday and encountered H1N1 while they were there has been fantastic so far.
While they are the region's first confirmed cases, so far there hasn't been any local transmission of the virus. What's more, doctors say we shouldn't panic about swine flu because it's not much worse than the seasonal flu.
The actual symptoms and the severity is very similar to the usual influenza.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Firefighters say response times across our region are about to get a whole lot worse.
The New South Wales Fire Brigade has a guaranteed response in Sydney area of 10 minutes to 95% of calls. Because of these station closures, we can't guarantee that service to the people of Newcastle.
Fireys say 99% of the time these stations from Lake Macquarie, Newcastle and the Lower Hunter will be unmanned during the working week, and that, they say, could have huge repercussions if a fire ignites at or in nearby infrastructure.
The brigade just doesn't want to pay to run these places, and that's our stink at the moment.
Fireys say they don't know when stations go offline and consequently can be left without backup. The move has also seen training exercises cancelled. Officers raised the issue with the Premier on Thursday night.
We virtually got brushed, told to go and see our Commissioner and work our problems out with him.
If things don't change, they are considering strike action.
Industrial action cannot be ruled out.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
After Australia won team honours on night one, this was about individual glory, but the Bulls weren't missing out on that. The championship round, more like a top 10 shootout, but more than one found themselves in the crosshairs. Originally from the state's northwest, 19-year-old Tom McCallum now lives just minutes from the Newcastle Entertainment Centre, and didn't he provide that? The reigning Rookie of the Year looking every bit the pro, going the 8 seconds to take the lead. He sat on top until the final ride, and Mexican Rocky McDonald made that count. A star back on the American circuit, McDonald won plenty of fans last night with a 90-point effort to wow the crowd and pip the young Australian for the win.